Welcome to Bookish Mind Podcast, Season 4, Episode 18, where we continue our exploration of Atomic Habits by James Clear. Today, we unpack how aligning your habits with your natural talents and personality traits can make progress not only faster, but far more enjoyable. We're about to take a deep dive into how understanding your unique wiring can truly revolutionize the way you approach habit formation.
It's a critical shift in perspective, really.
Mhm.
For so long, the conversation around success, around habits, it's been dominated by sheer willpower, grit, just working harder.
Mhm.
But what if there's a path that leverages who you naturally are, making consistency and even greatness feel more effortless, more aligned? That's precisely what we'll explore today.
Okay, so let's unpack this fascinating concept of talent and genes, like you said, as it's presented in Atomic Habits. The book kicks off with this really striking comparison. Michael Phelps, the swimmer, obviously legendary, and Hicham El Guerrouj, a world-class middle-distance runner. Now, at first glance, you might assume, okay, elite athletes, different sports maybe, but probably similar builds, right?
Yeah.
Athletic types.
Yeah, you'd think so.
But the source reveals this surprising 7-inch height difference between them. And yet, get this, they were the exact same length inseam on their pants. What immediately stands out about that detail, it's kind of weird.
It is weird. And what's truly fascinating there is how their physical structures are so perfectly um, optimized for their chosen sports, almost like they were custom designed.
Yeah.
Phelps, he has relatively short legs for how tall he is, but this very long torso, which for a swimmer is just ideal. It maximizes the surface area for pulling through the water, creates incredible propulsion.
Ah, okay. Short legs, long torso. Got it.
Exactly. And then El Garouge, totally the opposite. He has incredibly long legs and a short upper body, the absolute ideal frame for distance running. Leg length there translates directly to stride efficiency. Their bodies are literally biological blueprints for success in those specific fields.
Wow. And the source asks us to imagine if these world-class athletes, despite all their dedication, all their athleticism, if they suddenly just swapped sports. Phelps, this powerhouse in the pool, he'd face a severe disadvantage running. The book notes at his peak, he was 194 pounds, which is like 40% heavier than El Garouge, who ran at an ultralight 138 pounds.
Yeah, that's huge. Every extra pound is a significant burden in distance running. He'd be fighting against his own physical nature from the very first step. It just wouldn't work nearly as well.
Right. And conversely, what about El Garouge in the pool?
Well, El Garouge, probably one of history's greatest runners, he likely wouldn't even qualify for the Olympics as a swimmer. It sounds harsh, but look at the stats. Since '76, the average height of male Olympic gold medalists in freestyle swimming is 6 feet 4 inches.
6'4", wow.
Yeah. Swimmers thrive on height, long backs, long arms, maximum reach, maximum pull through the water. El Garouge's shorter stature, his proportions, perfect for running, but they'd place him at an inherent, almost insurmountable disadvantage before he even touched the pool.
Okay, so this highlights a really crucial point, one that goes way beyond Olympic sports and speaks right to our everyday lives. The secret to maximizing your odds of success isn't just about working harder. It's profoundly about choosing the right field of competition. Does that mean hard work isn't enough? Or maybe even misguided sometimes? How do we square that old wisdom of just work harder with this idea of inherent advantage?
It's definitely not about negating hard work. It's more about strategically deploying it. See, what's fascinating here is that habits are just easier to perform, they're more enjoyable to stick with, and ultimately more satisfying when they align with your natural inclinations, your abilities. Like Phelps in the pool or El Garouge on the track. You basically want to play a game where the odds are inherently stacked, even slightly in your favor. Your genes don't predetermine your destiny, not at all, but they absolutely determine your areas of opportunity.
Areas of opportunity. I like that framing.
Yeah, and the environment you choose, that dictates the suitability of your genes. Competence, as the book reminds us, is highly dependent on context. Being smart, for instance, really depends on what subject you're being tested on.
Right. Makes total sense. So if this whole concept of finding your right game is so powerful for these elite athletes, how does it translate? For someone like me, or for you listening, trying to, I don't know, build a better morning routine or stick to a learning goal, or even decide on a career path, does this right game idea apply to our personality, to our everyday habits?
Absolutely. Maybe even more so, actually. The book emphasizes that genes are operating kind of beneath the surface of literally every single behavior we exhibit. It's
Yeah.
quite profound. In fact, Robert Plowman, a behavioral geneticist, he states that scientists have, and this is a quote, literally can't find a single one behavior that isn't influenced by our genes.
Wow, not a single one. That's a big claim.
It is. And it includes everything from, how much TV you watch to your likelihood to marry or divorce, even your vulnerability to stress. Our genes are constantly nudging us in certain directions.
Okay, so this leads us to our unique personality, which the material describes as basically a cluster of genetic traits. And then it introduces the big five personality traits. I think a lot of people have heard of these.
Probably, yeah.
Openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And it says we all fall somewhere along these five spectrums. So when the book talks about biological underpinnings for these traits, how does that actually, connect to our daily habits?
Right, and this isn't just abstract science. These biological links are crucial because they help explain why certain habits feel more natural or more satisfying to us than others. It's not just preference, it's deeper. For instance, extroversion. It can be observed right from birth by how babies react to loud noises.
Yeah.
Those who turn towards the noise,
Mm.
more likely to become extroverts later on.
Mm.
Or think about agreeableness. It's linked to higher natural oxytocin levels. That's the hormone that promotes social bonding. So this isn't just a biological factoid. It means for someone high in agreeableness, forming habits around community stuff, collaborative tasks, even just writing thank you notes.
Yeah.
It won't just be easy for them, relatively speaking, but genuinely rewarding at a deeper, almost chemical level. They're tapping into their natural inclination for connection. That makes those habits inherently satisfying and therefore sustainable.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And neuroticism, that tendency to be anxious or worry, you mentioned that's linked to a hypersensitive amygdala, the brain's threat detector.
Exactly. So it's clear our genes are providing these subtle, yet pretty powerful nudges. They influence our deeply rooted preferences, making certain behaviors easier or harder for different people. So the big question becomes, how do we stop fighting against these nudges?
Yeah, how do we work with them?
That's the key takeaway, really.
Yeah.
You don't have to apologize for these deep preferences or feel guilty. Instead, you need to work with them. It's about strategy.
Hmm.
So if you score lower on conscientiousness, for example, you might naturally be less orderly. Trying to force yourself into some super rigid, highly structured routine, that might feel like constantly swimming upstream. It'll be exhausting.
Right, constant battle.
Totally. So instead, you might need to lean more heavily on environment design, something we've talked about before in this deep dive series, to make sticking to good habits almost automatic. Remove the friction. The real power comes from building habits that work for your personality, choosing what genuinely suits you best, not just what's popular or what your friend is doing.
That's freeing, actually.
It is. The book reminds us there's a version of almost every habit that can bring you joy and satisfaction. And that's the core idea behind the fourth law. Make it satisfying. If you genuinely prefer rock climbing to pumping iron, build your exercise habit around climbing.
Or read romance novels if that's what you enjoy, not feeling like you have to read dense nonfiction if the goal is just to read more.
Exactly. It's about finding the path of least resistance for you, tailoring it.
Okay, so if finding our right game, our sweet spot, is so key, how do you, listening right now, actually start identifying those ideal habits, those areas where our natural strengths can really shine? How do we find that game in the messy reality of everyday life?
Well, it starts with a pretty simple truth. You're far more likely to enjoy and stick with the things that feel relatively easy or natural to you. It just makes sense, right?
Yeah, definitely.
When you're talented at something, you become competent faster. You get positive feedback, praise maybe, which then energizes you to keep going. You see progress where others might struggle, and that success often leads to rewards, maybe better pay, bigger opportunities, whatever. It becomes this powerful self-reinforcing cycle.
A virtuous cycle.
Exactly. Now, while the first step for any habit, as we learned from the third law, is to make it easy, that's crucial for getting started. But in the long run, if you want to keep advancing, keep feeling satisfied, you need to ensure you're playing the right game for your unique skill set.
Okay, but the most common approach seems to be trial and error, which, let's be honest, can feel incredibly inefficient. Like, you don't have time to try every single career or learn every single skill out there.
Totally impractical.
So, thankfully, the book proposes a more strategic approach. It's called the Explore-Exploit trade-off. What's that about?
Right. The basic idea is you begin with a period of exploration. Think about dating when you're younger, or maybe a liberal arts education in college where you try lots of different subjects,
Mm.
or how businesses use split testing for new products or website designs.
Casting a wide net.
Exactly. You cast a wide net, you try many possibilities. Then, after that initial exploration phase, you shift gears. You start to exploit the best solution, the best path you've discovered so far. But, and this is crucial, you don't stop exploring entirely. The book suggests maybe an 80-20 kind of rule. Dedicate 80, maybe 90% of your effort to the strategy or habit that's delivering the best results right now.
The exploit part.
Right. And reserve the remaining 10 or 20% for continued exploration and experimentation. Keep poking around. Google famously asks its employees to do this, right? 80% on the main job, 20% on passion projects.
And that led to things like AdWords and Gmail, didn't it?
Incredible, yeah. Blockbuster innovations came from that 20% time. Now, the optimal balance for you also depends on your current situation. If you're currently winning, well, exploiting makes sense. Keep doing what works.
But if you're struggling.
If you're struggling or stuck, exploring is probably more prudent. Look for new angles. And of course, how much time you have matters. More time allows for more exploration, less time. You probably want to focus on the best solution you've found so far.
Makes sense. And as you embark on this exploration phase, the book gives us 4 really powerful questions. They act like a kind of compass, continually helping you narrow in on the habits and areas that will be most satisfying, most fruitful for you. I found these really insightful.
They're great questions.
Okay, first one. What feels like fun to me but work to others? Now, this isn't necessarily about loving every single second, right? It's more about what kind of effort, or even pain, as the book puts it, can you handle easier than most people seem to? When are you genuinely enjoying yourself, or at least not complaining, while others around you are groaning?
Exactly. The work that hurts you less than it hurts others. That is often the work you are intrinsically made to do. Think about someone who just gets a kick out of organizing complex data while other people dread spreadsheets.
Guilty.
Huh. Or the person who enjoys detailed research, digging deep while others find it super tedious. That difference in perceived pain or fun is a huge signal.
Okay. Second question. What makes me lose track of time? This points right to that concept of flow state. We've all felt it, hopefully, where you become so utterly focused, so immersed in a task that the rest of the world, even time itself, just kind of melts away.
Yeah, that's being in the zone, as athletes call it. That perfect blend of happiness and peak performance.
And it's nearly impossible to experience genuine flow without finding the task incredibly satisfying on some level, right?
Absolutely. When you're in flow, you're operating at your peak, almost effortlessly. So reflecting on those moments when hours just disappear, that can reveal deep-seated interests and natural aptitudes. Maybe you realize you lose track of time when you're helping others problem solve, or maybe when you're tinkering with code, or painting, or playing music.
Third question, where do I get greater returns than the average person? This one taps into comparison, which we all do, often subconsciously. The book says a behavior is significantly more likely to be satisfying and motivating when the comparison is actually in our favor. The author, James Clear, shares his own example. His email list started growing really quickly. He wasn't even totally sure why he was excelling at first, but the results just seemed to come faster for him than for some of his colleagues. And that disproportionate positive feedback, it fueled him to keep writing.
That's such a crucial feedback loop. When you see your efforts yield more significant results than others are getting for similar effort, it's incredibly encouraging.
Yeah.
It's not about being arrogant. It's just about recognizing where your efforts are amplified.
Yeah.
This could be in a specific type of writing, like for him, or maybe a niche skill at work, or even a particular hobby where you just naturally progress faster than your peers. It tells you, okay, this path is working for me.
Okay, and the fourth question, what comes naturally to me? This one challenges you to kind of momentarily ignore what you've been taught, what society expects, what others tell you you should do. It asks you to look inward and truly ask, what feels natural? When have I felt most alive? When have I felt like the real me?
Yeah, that's a deep one.
It is. It's about tuning into those feelings of engagement, of genuine enjoyment, without any internal judgments or, people-pleasing tendencies getting in the way.
This is all about authenticity. Whenever you feel authentic and genuine in what you're doing, you're almost certainly heading in the right direction for you. It's about finding where your values, your interests, and your natural inclinations truly intersect, even if it doesn't fit some conventional mold.
Now, to be honest, some of this process, it can feel a bit like luck. can't it? I mean, Michael Phelps, Hisham El Garouge, they were, in a sense, lucky to be born with abilities that society highly values, and then lucky again to be placed in environments where they could cultivate those
There's
abilities.
definitely an element of fortune involved there.
We all have limited time, and the truly great among us are often those who not only work hard, but also have that good fortune to be exposed to opportunities that uniquely favor them. But what if you don't want to just leave it up to luck? What if you feel like you haven't found that perfect game yet?
Precisely. And this is where it gets really empowering. If you can't find a game where the odds are naturally stacked in your favor, the book offers this really profound solution. Create one.
Create your own game. How does that work?
Well, think about Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert. He's a prime example. He candidly states that, look, everyone has at least a few areas where they could probably be in the top 25% with some effort. He wasn't the best artist. He wasn't the best comedian.
Right. He says he could draw better than most people, but wasn't a great artist. Funnier than most, but not like a stand-up comedian.
Exactly. Average skills, relatively speaking. But he combined those average skills, his drawing, his humor, with his business background. And boom, he created this unique, niche, corporate satire in cartoon form.
Dilbert.
Dilbert. It's about winning, not just by being better at something everyone else is doing, but by being different. By strategically combining your maybe average skills, you drastically reduce the level of competition. You carve out your own space.
So you can kind of shortcut the need for, like, a genetic superpower or decades of practice just by rewriting the rules of the game.
Pretty much. A good player works hard to win the game everyone else is playing. But a truly great player, they create a new game that inherently favors their unique strengths and cleverly sidesteps their weaknesses.
The author himself did this, right, in college?
Yeah, he created his own major, biomechanics. It combined physics, chemistry, biology, anatomy. He realized he wasn't, the absolute smartest student to stand out among the top physics majors or the top biology majors on their own. So he created his own unique lane.
Smart.
And because it suited him perfectly, he was only taking courses he was genuinely interested in studying, felt way less like a chore. Plus, it helped him avoid that trap of constantly comparing himself to everyone else in those single disciplines.
That concept of specialization, of niche creation, it feels really powerful, even if you don't feel like you're the most naturally gifted person in any single big area.
You can often achieve exceptional results by being the best in a very specific, maybe narrow category that you essentially define yourself. The book uses this wonderful analogy. Boiling water. It softens a potato but hardens an egg.
Right.
You can't control whether you're born a potato or an egg, fundamentally. But you absolutely can decide to play a game where it's better to be hard or where it's better to be soft. If you can find a more favorable environment or create one, you can transform a situation where the odds seem stacked against you into one where they are undeniably in your favor.
Okay, so after all this discussion about aligning with our nature, finding our right game, what does this ultimately mean for the actual work, for the effort we still need to put in? Does finding your right game mean it's all easy from then on? No more struggle?
Not at all, no. That's a misconception. Our genes, our inclinations, they don't eliminate the need for hard work. What they do is clarify it. They tell us what to work hard on.
Okay. Clarity.
Yeah. Once you understand your natural strengths, your inclinations, you gain incredible clarity on where to spend your precious time and energy, which opportunities to pursue with real vigor, and maybe which challenges might be wiser to avoid or at least approach differently. The better you understand your nature, the more precise and effective your strategy can become. It's about strategic effort, not less effort necessarily.
That's a really crucial distinction, because we often do compare ourselves to the Michael Phelps of the world, and we feel limited by our own perceived natural limits. But are you saying our own potential, even within our specific genetic predispositions, is almost always far greater than we realize? That we rarely even get close to our own true ceiling?
Absolutely. That's a key point in the book. It isn't advocating for accepting mediocrity or avoiding any kind of challenge. It's about strategic effort and maximizing your personal leverage. If you've found your right game, your genes essentially clarify the target, yeah. But then it's all about putting in the deliberate, focused practice to see just how far you can go within that aligned path. Don't mistake a natural inclination for some automatic finish line you can't cross. The truth is, most of us rarely exert the kind of consistent effort needed to even get close to our own personal capabilities, let alone whatever theoretical genetic limits might exist.
Okay. And connecting this to the bigger picture, it means genes can't make you successful if you're just not willing to do the work, right?
Exactly. Don't fall into that trap of explaining away someone else's success as just pure luck or genetics until you've put in the same kind of consistent reps yourself, especially in an area aligned with your potential strengths. You might be genuinely surprised at what you're capable of when you apply yourself in an area where your nature is truly an advantage, not a disadvantage.
So ultimately, one of the most powerful ways, maybe the most powerful way, to ensure your habits remain satisfying, sustainable over the long haul, is to deliberately pick behaviors that align with your unique personality, your inherent skills.
Mm,
It's about working hard, yes, but working hard on the things that, for you, might just come a little bit easier, feel a bit more natural. This whole deep dive into atomic habits, it really underscores the transformative power of self-awareness.
it really does. And that raises an important question, I think, for you listening.
Yeah.
Given what we've discussed today about aligning with our natural inclinations, how might understanding your personal Big Five profile maybe, or reflecting on those fun, not work activities,
Yeah.
how might that change the very first habit you choose to cultivate or refine next?
Oh, good question.
What seemingly small shift based on your nature could make a habit truly click for you, making it not just easy, but genuinely, deeply satisfying?
That's a powerful thought to leave with, a real invitation for some self-discovery there. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into atomic habits. We really hope it sparks some new ways for you to think about building habits that truly, truly work for you.